Welcome to Shul.com. We are here today talking about Hanukkah and all the different ideas and some halachot. So let's go quickly discussing the location of where you need to place the Hanukkiah. So if you take a look, there are actually three different options that you have when you want to light it. First, you have the doorway. The doorway would be as follows. When you are inside of the house, you're looking at the mezuzah, which will be on the left because the mezuzah is always placed on the right side when you walk into the house. So from the inside of the home, the mezuzah will be on the left. Your Hanukkiah should be on the right side, one tefach from the opening. And then you have this guy over there that I put with his tzitzit. And the Chachamim bring down that by doing this, you have three mitzvot. You'll have the mezuzah on the left, the Hanukkiah on the right, and then you'll have the male, the man, wearing his tzitzit. And they say, "V'achut hamshulash lo b'merah yinatek." The chut is the string of the three of thrice will not quickly come apart. If one string maybe come apart, two and not maybe come apart, but three, it's much less likely. And they say doing these three mitzvot, this is one of the ways to do it. The second option that you could do is by putting it at a window that looks out to the Shut HaRabim, to the public street. So you'll put the Hanukkiah on a window that people could see from the outside. That may not coincide with the location of this. You may not have a window here. So it might be in a different location. That's the second option. And the third one is to actually place it outside. So let's review a couple of them. Outside, why is that important? Why is this a part of the miracle? And it's brought down because originally when the Greeks went into the Beit HaMikdash, they defiled the Beit HaMikdash, they put a pig on the Mizbeach, and they made idols, they even made a Beit Zonot, a house of ill repute in the Beit HaMikdash. The Greeks were not out to destroy the temple, they were out to remove the Kedusha, and so that Am Yisrael should become Hellenized and to assimilate into their nation. So at that point, when the Hashmonaim ended up taking over and winning the battle of the war, what they ended up doing is they had to clean up the place, and they wanted to do it quickly, and nightfall was coming. So they took the menorah, which is normally found in the Kodesh, and the Kodesh has on it a parochet. There's a doorway that closes. So normally when someone lights the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, you wouldn't see it. I know that it's brought down in the Gemara that Shlomo HaMelech added 10 menorahs outside, but we're talking about the original menorah, and that was in the Kodesh. So what happened with the Hashmonaim, and the Hashmonaim are the family of the Kohanim of Matityahu, as opposed to the Maccabim, which were those that were in the army. That's the difference between Hashmonaim and Maccabi. Maccabi was those soldiers, as opposed to the Hashmonaim, which were the family. So when the Hashmonaim came in, they ended up taking the menorah outside of the Kodesh because they were trying to mitaher the place and clean it up, and they put it outside in the courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. That's why when you look at the Anisim, it says vehidliku nerot behatzrot kochecha. They lit the candles in the courtyard of your holy place, of your home, of the Beit HaMikdash. And so that's where the custom comes to do it outside. And for many years in Brooklyn, I would make a little box. I had a glass box that I bought, and I would put it outside on a low table to the ground, which we'll get to the location of where to put it. And we did it that way for many years. Rav Musafri recently has been posek that it's better to do it inside of the house, and there's also a level of kedusha within the house. And we're going to look at the Gemara now that shows why that's good. The other option of the window is for the Pirsum Hanes, so that others can see the miracle. And then you have the doorway. The doorway is actually found in a Gemara. It's Masechet Shabbat, and I'll show you the Gemara. It's on Shabbat 23 Amud Bet. Let's take a look. It says, Amar Rav Huna, Haragil Bened, a person who accustoms himself to a candle, one candle, Bened, Havyan le Banim Talmidei Chachamim, he will have boys that are Talmidei Chachamim. And then it says, if you continue, Hazahid b'mezuzah, Zochel dirana'ah, someone who's careful with mezuzah to make sure it's on the right petachim, in the right location, he's going to have a nice home, a nice apartment, a nice place to live. And hazahir betzitzit zochel talit na'eh, and someone who's careful with his tzitzit, he'll end up having a nice talit, nice garments, and nice clothing that he will wear. So when the Gemara is referencing ner, It's referencing a segula in two different times. One of them is Zahir b'hadlakat nerot Shabbat, for the nerot of Shabbat, and it says ner because you are yotzeh with one candle on Shabbat if you want. Obviously we do two, and there's a few other ideas, but one would be yotzeh for Shabbat, and the second one is the ner of Hanukah, which you are also yotzeh with just one candle. And we'll go through the opinions of the candles in a few minutes, but there in the Gemara it says hazahir bener, someone who's careful with the ner. Now Rabbi Yitzhak Sagi Nahor ben Hara'avad, he was the son of the Ra'avad, and he was called the Av HaMekubalim, the father of all the Mekubalim. Some credit him with originally writing about the 10 Sefirot, some say it wasn't him. But one thing is for sure, Rabbeinu Bachya brings down, he's the father of all the Mekubalim. He's from one of the first of the modern day Mekubalim. I mean modern, the book was written 930 years ago. But the first Mekubal that we have that's brought down beside the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is Rabbeinu Haniyah ben Hakana. He's the one who wrote the Ana Bechawach. And in that Ana Bechawach is all the Shemot and the things of Kedusha. If you notice, on Friday night, you'll sometimes see in the Sidur to say the Ana Bechawach. They actually have it there between Mizmor David and the Lecha Dodi. Rav Musafi brings down that you're actually not supposed to say it. The reason why it's there is because there's 42 words there of the kavanot, and the acronyms of those words and those letters are a kavanah you're supposed to have in the Lecha Dodi. So when they put it in the Sidur, it was intended originally for the kavanah, not to actually say it. I know some communities say it, like the Shami, Syrian communities say it. I've seen others that don't say it. But the original reason why it's there was for the kavanah. Let's continue. The next part is in the height. The height of the hanukah. If a person put the hanukah on the floor, he's yotzeh. You would pass and you would get a reward for doing the mitzvah. But if you notice a little bit more, there's actually details where you should put it. The minimum, there's no minimum, you can actually put it anywhere, but you're supposed to put it from 3 tefachim, and that's the minimum. And then the maximum is 20 amot. Now, what I mean minimum is, I mean the right place would be 3 tefachim. If you put it on the ground itself, it would be okay. But when it comes to 20 amot, you can actually put it any higher than that. That's the highest. That would be 9.6 meters. When it comes to tefachim, 1 tefach, according to Harav Na'eh, would be 8 centimeters. Hazon Ish is 9.6 centimeters. So in most situations, we take the 8 centimeters, which is what is usually used by Sfaradim. Some Ashkenazim will take the Hazon Ish. And so you have 8 centimeters. For 1 tefach, that would be 24 centimeters there, and then 9.6 amot as the option. Now, what's the best place to light the Hanukkiah? The best. You want to do it the right way according to the opinions, the Sod, the Kabbalah for Sfaradim. Where would it be? It would be the minimum of 3 tefachim from the ground. You see here the ground, you have 3 tefachim up 24 centimeters, and then 7 tefachim to 10 tefachim is the Kabbalah. That would be the Sod. So the right thing, minimum wise, would be to put 3 above the ground, but the perfect would be where the flame itself is not higher than 10 tefachim. So if you have a really large Hanukkiah, you need to put it below 3 tefachim, but you'll have the flame within the 7 to 10, then that's better, or even right by the 10, that would be perfect according to the Sod. So you have it there. If you look at the Hanukkiah here, I place the Hanukkiah above the 7 tefachim, and then within 10 tefachim, which is 80 centimeters, the flame is the determining factor of where the Hanukkiah is placed, which means if the Hanukkiah was in 20 amot, but the flame was 22 amot, it would be a problem. The flame itself has to be maximum 20 amot, or in this type of structure of the 3, 7, and 10 tefachim, the flame should be at the 10 tefachim. That would be the perfect location to put it. Now, Rav Yitzhak Sagi Nahor, who was blind, they called him Sagi Nahor. It's an Aramite word. Sagi Nahor is a lot of light. In short, he had no vision, so it's almost a play on it. He was Iver. Rabbi Yitzhak Sagi Nahor, the Mikubal, tells us something pretty interesting. He actually says that the type of menorah that you use is also very important. And there are a few different levels of the types of menorah that you could use. So he shows as follows. He has a little pamphlet, a little kunteras called Sod Hadakat Ner Hanukah, the secret of the Hadakat Ner Hanukah. It has a lot of different kavanot, a lot of different things he brings down. But he says the first and best one would be one made out of zahav, a pure gold. That would be the best. The second would be kesef, silver. The third would be nechoshet, domeh lezahav, which is copper that looks like gold. It's yellow copper. That would be what would be called today probably bronze, which is in a dull gold. And bronze is when they take copper and they mix it with nickel. So you have that little bronze there. Number 4 is nechoshet, which is copper, but red copper. Red copper would be brass, where they add into the copper zinc and some other metals, keeping the red color of it. Number 5 was nechoshet, is metals that are mixed with copper. Of course, copper, the reason why they mix metals with copper is to strengthen the copper itself so that it's less malleable and stronger. The next one would be bedil, tin. 7 would be oferet, lead. 8 would be an even, which is stone. 9 would be zechuchit, which is glass. 10 would be etzem, a bone. 11 would be cheres mesupeh be'avad, be'eved, which is ceramic plated with molten lead. I found this perush in Masechet Avodah Zarah Ayin Hey Amud Bet. If you look at Rashi Diburta Malachim Kunya, he explains how it's a type of ceramic that they plate around. Now number 12 would be cheres that is unplated. It would be just ceramic, unplated, kind of like they do in some of the local shops. When they do ceramic, they sometimes do it unplated. It would be that way. 13 would be klipat rimon, which is a pomegranate shell, not just a leftover pomegranate shell, but one that was made specifically for Hanukkiah. Number 14 would be klipat 𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐍𝐄𝐃, which is the Indian walnut shell. The walnut comes in a really hard shell, and they would make a Hanukkiah out of that. And 15 would be klipat alon, an oak tree shell, to use it. Now, with all these, it's important to note that the mitzvah is broken down into 3 different levels. If a person wants to light the Hanukkiah with just one candle every single night, if he takes that one candle and puts it into a vessel, because it should not be placed directly onto a table, it has to be placed into a vessel, he is covered according to all the opinions that he did his mitzvah. Then you have the mitzvah mehadrin. Mehadrin is one candle per household member in your house. So if a person has 7 children, plus the father and the mother is 9, he would light every night 9 candles. Every single night. That was the second option. The third option would be 1 candle for every night. And then there's an argument between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. Bet Shammai says we start with 8 and then we diminish every night until you go down to 1. So the 8th day of Hanukkah, you would have 1 light, 1 candle left over, as opposed to Bet Hillel. Bet Hillel says no. We start with 1 every night and we work our way up. And if you guys had seen earlier on the drawing here with the Hanukkiah, you'll notice that I made a little arrow on top, because when you're placing it next to the door, each night the new candle goes towards the left side. So this would be the second night, that's the shamash. And you start from the second to the first. So you're always going from left to right when you're lighting the Hanukkiah, and the new one is going to be towards the left there. Now the reason why we have a shamash is a few reasons, but the main reason is that if the light was going to be used from the Hanukkiah, we would be using it from the shamash, because you're not supposed to have any hana'ah from the remaining candles of the Hanukkiah. It's interesting because the Gemara says, Hazahir bener havlan de banim tamidei chachamim. The other ner they're talking about is Shabbat, and when it comes to Shabbat, the purpose of the candle is specifically for light and for hana'ah to use. But when it comes to the Hanukkiah, no. And each one of these lights, the candles, or the oil and wick, should last for a total of minimum of 30 minutes every single day of the holiday. On Friday, when you're lighting it early, you should make sure to add a little bit more oil so that you get covered of 30 minutes after the Shki'ah, after sunset goes down. And so you have the 30 minutes. Now, what's interesting, Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahor says, if you look, most people are careful with lighting Shabbat candles every week, and they are careful with lighting Hanukkiah candles. How come there's no masses of banim talmidei chachamim? Talmid chacham is a very high level. There's Rav, there's Dayan, there's Hacham, then there's Tamid Hacham. Tamid Hacham is the highest, is when a person reaches the level where he realizes that he's always going to be a student. Mikol milamdai hiskalti, I learn from everyone, including my own students, and that life is a constant learning process, that I'm always a Tamid Hacham. That's the highest level. So the question is, where are all these Tamidei Chachamim then? So Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahor says, you have to actually know that a person could be Yotzei the mitzvah, but he's not going to actually get the sigula of the beracha of Banim Tamidei Chachamim unless he goes into the specifics. Just like there's specifics with the type of Hanukkiah, there's specifics of location, there are specifics for how many candles to light. There are specifics where how you can light, doorway, window, outside. In some situations where you light by the doorway, if you have a window that's out to the shutabim, you can light a second Hanukkiah or get an electric one without a beracha and have it so you have pirsum hanis. But all these details are important for the sigula to work according to the Gemara. So a lot of times people, they're using, let's say, a lucite Hanukkiah, gorgeous, beautiful, but that's not even one of the 15. So he knocked out using any of the top 15, he made his own, 16, 17, 18. So he didn't follow that process. He does it where it's above 10 tefachim. He's yotzeh. He's yotzeh, he gets the credit. But you want the full beracha, you got to do it right. It's no different than a chef who gets all of the ingredients for baking something, but is not given the measurements. So he bakes it using his intelligence, his mind, and he comes out with a beautiful cake. But if you look at the original ingredients, it tastes a little different. Okay, he made the cake, you get the credit, everything's okay. But you want to do it the right way, you want to do it perfectly. People today, when it comes to everything in their life, they want it to be perfect. They want the best car, the best home, they want the best quality clothing, and everything at the top. So when it comes to mitzvot, be fair. Be fair. When it comes to the mitzvot, take another few more moments and take a look of how to do it in the most appropriate way in order to follow the mitzvah. Now, an interesting thing about the doorway, why would the doorway be important? If you look at the Gemara tells us it discusses nir, it discusses at the time mezuzah and tzitzit, so we can kind of put them all together. But what else is there on the doorway which is important? So it's interesting, but the Greeks were the original galut of the Western civilization, west of Israel, and they are the father to the Romans. Meaning the Romans, when they had already established themselves, had taken from the foundation of the Greeks. Now the Greeks had a policy. Their policy was they didn't want to destroy the Jewish nation. They just wanted to uproot the religion from them. It's very important to know this, is that they were not trying to kill anybody. That's why on Hanukkah, there's no actual mitzvah of eating, as opposed to Purim. When Purim, Haman was out to kill the people. Because he's out to kill the people and he was out for the goof, the body, then we celebrate a seudah with him as a mitzvah on Purim. When it comes to Hanukkah, they were out for the soul. They said, listen, you Jews, you can continue doing what you're doing. We just don't want you doing Shabbat. We don't want you doing Rosh Chodesh. We don't want you to do Brit Milah. And it's interesting. That's why you say Hanukkah Sameach. Hanukkah Sameach. The Shin would be Shabbat, the Mem would be Milah, and the Het would be Chodesh. Now, what do you mean Chodesh? Chodesh was twofold. One, they didn't want them to bless the Chodesh Birkat Levana. In essence, they were also saying, that's your first mitzvah. Chodesh Aseh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim, that's your first mitzvah. We want to annul it from the beginning. There's no first mitzvah, there's no last. Stop it. They wanted to remove it. And by the way, the Hellenists were very successful. They had over 90% of the Jewish population that had lost their knowledge of Yahadut, of reading Hebrew, of being able to understand. They were reading the Torah in the Septuagint, in Greek. And that today is the Sefarim Chitzonim. But they were very proud of it. They said, listen, we have a Greek Torah. The Gemara even has a discussion if writing Torah in a different language could be kosher, and one opinion holds that in Greek it would be okay. Obviously, we don't follow it, but just to show you that if the Gemara is bringing you these opinions, they're not bringing them to show you that they were foolish opinions, but rather there is something into that opinion. Now, why else would they want to go after the Chodesh? They didn't want the women counting the days for the Nidah. It's very important to know that the Hagmon, the governors or the heads of the cities at the time, would require every Jewish lady that was going to get married that night to go to the Hagmon's house in order that he sleeps with her first. It's a terrible decree that they had, and they would rape every Jewish lady that was going to get married. I saw one opinion brought down that it wasn't every single woman, it was specifically the people obviously living in Israel, but Furthermore, it was that he had a choice. So he would take any of the women that were getting married that night, they would all come to his house, and he would choose what he wanted that night. This one or that one, and the different types, and he would choose that. And it wasn't every single woman every time, but it was a risk of being raped right before the wedding every time, and they couldn't stop this. Now, what does that have to do with the dalit? Because the dalit was a form of privacy. People had privacy in the home. They could keep Shabbat, they could do Brit Milah, and they would be able to have the home purity. It's interesting to note that there's a custom amongst Sfaradim to light candles at a Brit Milah. Where did this come from? So one of the sources I saw brought down, but this is actually a custom that came from the times of the Yevanim, that didn't allow Brit Milah. So what did the Jewish do? They couldn't create flyers on WhatsApp because that technology wasn't there. And if it was, they probably were using it because they were all Hellenized, kind of like where many people are today. So what they do, they would light a table with lots of candles outside of the home. And that was the secret code. Whenever anyone saw that there were a bunch of candles outside of the home, they knew a Brit Milah was taking place. And so they would go into the home at the right time and they would come do the Brit Milah. That was one of the secrets why today we still do that custom. You'll see it a lot amongst the Lebanese shuls, the Syrian shuls, and this Devarim sheberumo shel olam. There's a lot of good things in that minhag of doing it. So why the dalit? Because the dalit allowed privacy, to be tsanua. And this is a key component of Judaism. Judaism is always about separating a tahor and tameh, good and bad, a male and female. We separate. Jewish people, we separate things, while the goyim are all about irbuvia. Men go with the women, men with men, the married with unmarried, everyone goes with each other. That's irbuvia. Jewish people, no, we separate. Everything's about separation. And the dalit is a form of siniut, to separation, what's outside the home and what's inside the home. And the Greeks said, listen, we don't want this. We want to have no doors, and that was one of the gezerot. No doors allowed. By having no doors, they can inspect anytime. There would be no privacy of any kind. So that would take away from that. And that would be able to destroy the morale of Jewish people. So when we're lighting the Hanukkiah, we are remembering that dalit, that door, along with the gezerah. And this is just a couple ideas on the holiday of Hanukkah and the importance that it has for us. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.